Day 1177 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 970,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,220 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 8 tanks, 13 APVs, 45 artillery, an air defense system, and 1 helicopter, which likely relates to some sparse reports of a Russian helicopter that was downed in or near Mariupol, which sounded related to a friendly fire incident, but little more is known at this stage. Then starting off today with a truly current event news story, as Ukrainian President Zelensky has touched down in Turkey's Ankara, with Ukraine's top-tier delegation team in tow, setting the stage for ending the war. The Ukrainian entourage includes the heavyweights of Defense Minister Umerov, SBU Chief Maluk, Foreign Minister Sibia, and other top military leaders and intelligence heads. Meanwhile, Russia. Well, where to start? As the Kremlin confirmed practically last minute of Putin's declining to lead the Russian delegation, where meanwhile, and in contrast, the Russian representation arrived in Istanbul with low-level officials you may not have even heard of before, names like Vladimir Medensky, a presidential aide, backed by a roster of lesser-known deputies. No Putin, no Shoigu, no Gerasimov, not even the country's foreign minister, Lavrov, effectively amounting to a third-tier token delegation of low-level officials, behaving as though the war had only just begun a few weeks ago. The snub hasn't gone unnoticed. Estonia's foreign minister, Sakna, called the low-level Russian delegation a slap in the face, criticizing them as mere understudies. Some of Ukraine's foreign ministry accused Putin of hiding, and NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte also called out the Russian ensemble, stating that the Kremlin is not taking advantage of the opportunity at hand. President Zelensky, fresh off the flight, and by that stage aware of the low-level delegation designed for high-level talks, called the Russian representation a mock-up team, and only interested to know if the opposing delegation had any mandate to actually make decisions. Now, speaking of diplomacy and foreign affairs, well, perhaps Putin was busy because Russia has just received in some, quote, Afghanistan-respected partners, aka Afghan Taliban officials. Now, should Putin be seen catching up with this crowd instead, it would be nothing short of symbolizing flipping the bird at the Istanbul peace talks. And as for the Istanbul event, President Erdogan is hosting a significant assembly of international guests, including US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and NATO General Secretary Rutte, alongside other foreign ministry leaders, right as Zelensky has geared up to speak with Putin. All of which underscores the obvious. Putin's absence looms heavily over already fragile negotiations. As such, this Russian guest list feels, perhaps unsurprisingly, entirely predictable, mirroring the Kremlin's well-worn stalling tactics seen since February. Because on this day, they've put their best foot last, kicking off proceedings with the lowest rung of representatives, a delegation scraped from the bottom of the barrel. The playbook appears to involve dragging things out, starting low, then inching toward a second-tier group, maybe? Then eventually, perhaps sending top-level officials. And even if that happens later down the track, there's every chance that the Kremlin will just loop the cycle again. Spinning time, not progress, if history is anything to go by. Then taking a break from this news for now, and off to the main map with an interesting trend, seen week over week where the number of Russian fire missions is down 27%, specifically referring to big guns here, the larger caliber 152mm howitzers, towed and untowed, with this trend suggesting that the recent ammunition explosion at the 51st GRAU arsenal in Russia's Vladimir region on April 22nd has impacted their fire rate operations. Then headed deeper into the map and starting out with not precisely the most worthy of map activity inclusions, but at Solenya on the Pokrovsk front. A lone Russian infantryman uses and loses a lightsaber duel against the AFU's Flying Skull unit. This quadcopter came in for 3 separate sweeps, with the Sith acolyte failing to swat the drone on each occasion when waving his lightsaber. The third sweep in became a direct hit. Also on this axis, Russian forces continued their salient push beyond the highway, in some ways bypassing the highway to take the nearby settlement. And with zooming out, you'll notice the Russian armed forces' overarching strategy here in the medium term, which is to close off this Pokrovsk to Chasiv garrison, leading into hopes of taking Konstantinivka, a town they would consider a prized possession. What an incredible grind to take that is, though. Also reported near Pokrovsk, Russia's 15th Black Hussars Motor Rifle Brigade crossed paths with another AFU bird, as soldiers riding in their civilian car got their own first-person view of a Russian vehicle of some description becoming targeted from above, with all of it seen through the lens of this. All the army professionalism of an old Lada sedan turned convertible, with its roof mostly cut out and trunk lid removed. Then, speaking of Chasiv Yar from a moment ago, where zooming in, although hard to discern, Russian ground crews have taken half a square kilometer of urban land while pushing northwest from central Chasiv Yar, heading in the direction of their most western pocket of those old Pivnichny districts that they've been stationed at, as part of their long-standing, most forward-facing positions in this region. Then taking a look around on the map as Ukrainian soldiers from the 53rd Mechanized Brigade destroyed a combination of different types of Russian logistics, be it trucks, vans, and civilian sedans, but also showing their focused effort on targeting enemy communications systems as well. And for a slight change of pace, also seen on the map, was the moment of office trash can basketball, but in this case the grenade being the waste paper, and the office being the minefield laden battlefield. Cleaning up the mess. Looks like a formerly destroyed Russian position. Then back to some news, with those Istanbul talks between Russia and Ukraine slow to start. Originally intended to commence this morning, but were later pushed to the afternoon. And for these face-to-face bilateral talks, well, given the lack of involvement of any higher-level Russian officials, expectations are not high. Take, for example, Kremlin spokesperson Peskov, who just stated this morning that Putin has defined Russia's positions for the negotiations in Istanbul based on briefings held a day earlier. And what is that position exactly? Well, take it from the Russian political official who should have been at today's talks in the very least, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who stated just earlier today that Moscow's goal in the expected peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul is for achieving sustainable peace by addressing the root causes of the conflict, rather than a ceasefire, which entirely suggests a lack of change in Russia's ongoing position, leading to a token delegation group being sent off to do the preordained bidding. Now, as for Zelensky, when speaking with journalists upon his arrival at Ankara airport earlier today, had said that the Ukrainian delegation is of the highest level, and going on to say, quite succinctly, quote, "We need to understand the level of the Russian delegation and whether they are capable of making decisions on their own, because we all know who makes decisions in Russia." End quote. So what a fantastic and well-timed point to make, because since there's only one person that can really make any decisions in Russia, it speaks a whole lot to Putin's absence at today's proceedings. I had hoped for more from Putin's nearly 2 a.m. Sunday morning press conference theatrics, which resulted in Ukraine's main stage entourage showing up, but with Putin missing in action, it's given that whole meeting could have been done by an email type of energy to it. Then headed to a different type of negotiation news, due to the, so far a letdown, Istanbul talks. So looking at some hardware news, first up, more seen of a less heard from Ukrainian UAV, the Shuklan V5, first publicly identified in October of 2024 and first used a few months later when deployed in a strike on Russia's Smolensk aviation plant in Russia, a facility involved in the modernization of Su-25 aircraft, for a platform that has now seen the Shuklan UAVs enter serial production, another UAV on the list to do so, and boasts a 500 to 700 kilometer range, far enough to reach Moscow and then some into the next oblast. Then in some more hardware news, for the first time, footage of Ukrainian S-200 surface-to-air missile launches have been released. The footage is newly released, but the capability is not. These modified S-200s have been used to target and shoot down several very valuable Russian military aircraft in the past. Some of you may remember the Russian Tu-22 strategic bomber shot down over Stavropol Krai in April of last year. And who could forget the Russian A-50 AWACS planes downed twice, first over the Sea of Azov in January last year, and then over Krasnodar Krai 1 month later. At the time, it was noted that the weapon of choice was the S-200 surface-to-air launched missiles, but was never really heard of much more than that. Looks like Russia's not the only one with Cold War stockpiles. Then to a quick final hardware update, the EU is on track to send Ukraine more than 1.35 million artillery shells this year, as per Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's been a long and arduous journey in ramping up production because, adding some context here, 2023 saw deliveries from the EU to Ukraine only hitting about 400,000 shells. Then in 2024, it fell short of the 1 million per annum shell goal, delivering only 600,000 or 700,000 rounds. But now for 2025, with these announcements, 5 months into the year, revealing a positive expectation of reaching almost double that of last year, with 1.35 million now. In fact, if you were to plot this on a graph, that would show an almost doubling from every previous year, making that graph display an exponential curve. And then as for a related tidbit of artillery news, French President Macron has confirmed that all Caesar 155mm self-propelled howitzers produced in France this year will be supplied to Ukraine. That amounts to 12 per month. It's a powerful show of resolve from a single nation as France steps forward to assert greater leadership in European security and reshape its role as a pillar of strength in this conflict. So that's it for today, guys. Been keeping an eye on all of this currently unfolding news about the bilateral talks in Istanbul, with the highest hope that Putin would arrive. I suppose colour me shocked, with everything so far pointing to more stalling tactics by the Kremlin, though I hope I'm wrong. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!